Good morning, everyone. In the previous lesson, we had a brief introduction about the congruence, and we learned how to create a congruent statement. But as I mentioned before, this unit we're going to spend more time to introduce the methods to prove the two triangles congruent. So today we're going to introduce the first two methods. And today's lesson we are going to have two videos. The first video we're going to study the methods, and the second we're going to have some examples to reinforce our understanding. So let's get started. So the first part, actually, we want to reinforce this word prove. So as I mentioned, this lesson we're going to learn how to prove two triangles congruent. So prove, you can think about this when you listen to this word or when you hear people saying prove, what does that mean to you? So very in general, or we can even say in geometry, prove is like use either given information or evidence to show something true. Just like, for example, when somebody like talking to you, how do you prove, or how can you prove she said that? Then probably you have to use evidence to actually verify your claim. However, we do not say things like I think, I assume. So in geometry, the most important one thing you have to remember is whenever we want to prove something, do not assume. What does that mean? That means, for example, when I look at the graph or when I look at the given information, you cannot say it look like they are parallel or it look like it is a isosceles triangle. You have to use solid evidence to help you or to show you which is true. So since we said a proof is to use given information, then if we want to prove two triangles, for example, we have a random two triangle here. How do we prove them congruent? And also you cannot say, hey, it looks like they're exactly the same, or you will say, hey, it looks like they're different, so that's why they're not congruent. This is not the solid or valid proof in geometry. We have to use evidence. And when you look at the two triangles here, I know each triangle has the three angles and also have three sides. Let's use the different marks. So if we are looking at two triangles, that means we have six angles together, we have six sides together. Do I have to use all the information to prove the two triangles congruent? Luckily, we don't. We actually only use partial information, so we can use it to prove the two triangles congruent. So let's see the very first method. So the first method is actually focused on the size only. So first method is telling us if all three sides of a triangle are congruent to these three sides to another triangle, then these two triangles are congruent. Also, you can try to draw a triangle on your own. You can say I have 3, 4, 5 to draw a triangle, and you can see no matter how many times you try, your triangle are always going to be the same as long as you know the three sides of that. And in geometry, as I mentioned, we can write down the simple, we use the symbols to write down the statements very easily. So this one, if we convert it to the if-then statement, is going to say if, according to the picture, Mn for this side, Mn, let's change it. Mn is congruent to QR. MP, or you can even say Pn, doesn't matter, congruent to RS. And lastly, PM is congruent to SQ. See, all three sides are congruent, then this two triangle are congruent. This is our congruent statement. This is by. So as you can see, we use a 3 sides, so we easily to call this method SSS. So sometimes we say, hey, this two triangle congruent by SSS, meaning you indicate the method. So this is called solid proof. So you indicate the method, which is SSS, by this one. Okay, so now we are going to introduce a second method, but before that, we are going to introduce a very short vocabulary called included angle. What does that mean? Included angle is actually based on a triangle. So as you can see, in a triangle, we have 3 angles here. So included angle is talking about the angle between 2 sides. Let's check this one. I'm checking these sides here. So if I'm looking at these 2 sides here, then this angle is included angle for these 2 sides. So the included angle is not like specific one position. It depends on what are the 2 sides we're talking about. So let's see. For example, I'm talking about these 2 sides. What is included angle for these 2 sides? You probably figure out the answer. It's in the corner here, right? So that's included angle, the angle between 2 sides. But you have to understand this is actually in a triangle. If we're talking about like different thing, or it has to be like in type of the figure. But if you just give me an angle, that's not what we're saying here. So let's check the next one. Method 2. Method 2 says if 2 sides, this time we only use 2 sides of a and the included angle of the one triangle are congruent to the corresponding parts, then the triangle congruent. So let's check what does that mean. If one side congruent, the other side, let's use a different color, the other side is also congruent, and the included angle also congruent. That's why these two are congruent. So let's use a very similar way, write down the congruent statement. We had it like that way. So we said, if according to this picture, PQ congruent to WX, some student might say, can I write down XW? Yes, you can. And angle Q is congruent to angle X. And lastly, SQ is congruent to XY. Again, if you want to write down YX, that's also fine. Then SPQ, triangle congruent to, remember, whenever you create a congruent statement, you have to make sure the order matches. So S is matching to Y, then triangle Y. P is matching to W, W, the last one is X. Okay, if you use a different order, that's perfectly fine, but please make sure the order matches by, as you can see, I use one side angle, the another side, that's called side angle side. So this method is I use single side angle side to prove these two triangles congruent. Okay, so that's 2 methods I want to introduce. Later in the second video, we are going to look at examples to see how do we use the method and how do we determine which method we can use to prove. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video. See you soon in the next video.